There are a few foundational behaviours that can make muzzle training easier for us. The first one that I'm going to show you here. So the first one here is a chin rest, so you can see her resting her chin on my hand. I'll show you shortly how this is useful. So you can see that again here, she rests her chin on my hand and she gets a treat for doing that. And you can see that we're doing it with duration as well, so she could hold it for a while. This next one is a nose hold, so you can see that she's got her nose up in my hand there. Again, we've got duration on that, so she can hold it there for a short period of time. This next one here is a hand target, so it's often called a touch cue, so she just bumps her nose into my hand there like that. I'll show you now how all three of these behaviours are useful when we start introducing the muzzle. So here you can see I get the muzzle and I ask her for a touch with my hand behind the muzzle, and she puts her head straight in that muzzle to touch my hand through it. This is a chin rest inside the muzzle, so she's just getting her head used to being inside there with a behaviour that she already knows. She's very good at her chin rest. And then here we're going to use the nose hold as well. So my hand goes on top of the muzzle and she puts her nose in and her nose goes to the top of the muzzle. This, for me, is probably the most useful behaviour because when dogs wear muzzles, their nose actually sits at the top, so it's more realistic. Okay, this is me introducing the muzzle from scratch, so if a dog had never seen or worn one before, so I'm literally showing her the muzzle from far away. She doesn't have to touch or interact with it. All she needs to do is vaguely look at it, and that's absolutely fine. She gets a treat for looking at it. I'm speeding through here because she already knows the muzzle, so now she's booping it with her nose, she's interacting with it voluntarily. There's no kind of coercion or forced interaction. She's choosing to do all of these things. If your dog has never worn a muzzle or has an aversion to muzzles, you want to take this much slower. I'm now moving on to luring her face into the muzzle with a treat through the treat hole. Again, if your dog has an aversion to muzzles or is a little bit nervous, you don't want to rush into this. She's very happy putting her face in there, which is why I'm luring her through with a treat, but we never want to lure a dog towards something they don't like. So if your dog doesn't like the muzzle, don't move on to that next step. And here we're just having a little play as a break. It can be helpful to try different positions when you're doing training like this. So I tried a little session on the floor, and you'll see in a second she did not like it. She preferred to be up on the chair. So do a little bit of trial and error, see what works for your dog. We'll just show you here what we're doing. So I'm starting to introduce the strap to her. So she's understood the task when the muzzle is out is to put her face into it. So now that she's good at that and she's good at keeping her face in there with all the practice that we've done with the touch and the nose, I'm now starting to add the strap going around her head. And as you can see here, this is her saying to me, I don't really want to do this, and that's absolutely fine. So we stop there. She didn't enjoy doing the session down on the floor. So we go back up onto the chair, and again we're introducing that strap going around her head. We're doing it very gradually. So at first the strap's not even touching her. I'm just getting her used to my hands moving by the side of her head whilst her nose is in that muzzle. So here we are going back to introducing the strap going around her head, but we're doing it a bit more now, so the strap is now touching the back of her head. So each of these short clips is a different training session. So this is Buffy actually learning to wear a muzzle in real time. She doesn't know how to wear one at this stage, but she is very good at the steps that we're doing because we do practice it a lot. Dogs learn best in short bursts, so make your training sessions short. You could just do 1 or 2 a day, but no more than a couple of minutes. You'll see that they start to get bored or tired or disinterested, so you want to try and stop even before they get to that point. You'll see in a second here, Buffy says, I'm done now, this is boring. You can also see here we're working on duration, so she's keeping her face in that muzzle for a longer period of time, because when she will wear it, of course, it'll be on her face for more than a few seconds. And that's her here saying, I have had enough now, this is getting boring. And so we stop and we have a nice play. It's always good to play after a session. It helps solidify the learning they've just done. This is a different session, so now I'm moving on to using a squeezy treat as a reinforcer. So we were using dry treats before, and now we're using squeezy G's. The point of this session here is I'm getting her used to the muzzle balancing on her nose, because again, when she wears a muzzle, this is how it will fit. It will be resting on the top of her nose, and she will be carrying the weight of the muzzle on her face. So this is getting her used to it. So I'm literally just resting it on her nose whilst I feed her cheese through the treat hole. Okay, now I'm getting her used to putting her head through the strap. I want to work out how best to put it on her. We haven't put it on her yet. So you saw in previous sessions where I was putting it around her head. She didn't love that. She tolerated it, but she didn't love it. So what I'm working on is, can I get the muzzle on her without having the strap undone? So basically having the strap done up and getting her to put her head all the way through it. So you can see here, I'm luring her through. Notice that I'm not pushing the muzzle towards her. I'm luring her through the muzzle, and she's already trying to get her face into there because she's learned that equals good things. So again, having the muzzle up and putting the cheese on the other side, and gently pushing it over her ears just because she needs a little bit of help with that bit, and I'm having it wrapped around her neck. This is the first time she's ever experienced it around her neck, so I'm not going to stress her out any further. You can see she's a bit uncomfortable there because this particular muzzle has a buckle and not a clip, so it's a bit harder to put on and off. It takes a little bit longer to undo up and undo. So again, having her head through the strap, okay, taking it away, putting it back. You can see that she's going for the cheese and she's pushing her head through. As much as I can, I'm avoiding pushing the muzzle over her head. But what I want is that she's pushing her head into the muzzle, and there we go. We're switching it up now so that the strap has gone over her head and her face is in the basket. So we've done two of those things together. So previously we were doing them separately, and now we're putting two and two together. So I lure her head through the strap, and then I switch the cheese to going into the treat hole of the muzzle, which gets her face perfectly into the basket. So a lot of the time dogs don't like their ears being moved around like that. You can see she's not a huge fan, but she prefers this method of putting it on rather than me doing the strap up from scratch, and she is tolerating this pretty well. So I'm going to continue with that method unless she lets me know that she's not interested in that, but she's pretty okay. So this is the first time she's had it put on without the cheese luring her through it. So now we're getting her used to wearing it with the strap on, getting some cheese, and then the strap comes off again. So again, we're going to get her head in there. She doesn't even need the help of the cheese anymore, which is brilliant. She's happy to put her face in there. She does get a little bit weirded out, and the reason being is that the strap is very loose, which means when she looks down, the muzzle almost falls off her face. So what I'm going to start working on next is adjusting the strap so that it actually fits her properly, so that it doesn't move around once it's on her face, and you'll see me do that in a second. So here we are presenting the muzzle to her. She puts her face in voluntarily. I'm going to put it under her ears as gently as I can. You can see her head goes down. She's a bit confused. So you can see that posture from her there. She's backing up a little bit. So she's not entirely comfortable, but she has every opportunity to opt out if she wants to. She's happy to walk away. She knows that if she lays down or sits down, I will stop the session. So she's continuing for now, and obviously I'll watch her body language and we'll stop if she's had enough. Puts her face back in. That tells me that she's ready to go. I pull her ears through as gently as I can, and now I'm going to start fiddling with the buckle. This will help us practice me actually tightening the strap once it's on her, and I will do that properly in a second. I'm just introducing the idea that once the muzzle goes onto her face, I'm going to be fiddling with it for a second. So muzzle goes on, her ears go through, and I'm going to fiddle with the strap, and I think for this one I do actually tighten it. There we go. So she's there, perfect. So now the muzzle actually fits her. So she does back away a little bit. This is the first time she's ever worn it in a fitted way. So that'll be a bit different to what she's used to. So immediately we're coming off again and the session is done. I call it a day there. I don't want to push her any further because she's done brilliantly with that. That's the first time she's worn it with the strap adjusted correctly. There are other ways that we can muzzle train as well. This is an example. So we have literally her licking yogurt from a big pot. So her getting used to her putting her face inside something where her mouth is slightly restricted. And another example here. So I've got some bone broth. I'm putting it into a flat kind of plate or dish or bowl. And then I'm putting her muzzle inside it, which you'll see here, putting that down on the ground for her, and then she licks the bone broth out through the muzzle. You can also use treats or food. I just thought a liquid would be quicker and easier for her. And then I take the muzzle away shortly just because I don't want it to be too frustrating for her, just doing these things in short bursts to get them used to having these things on their face for short periods of time. This is another way that you can edit your muzzle to make it easier to do training. So here I am using an old sock. I've cut it to shape and I've put it over the top of the muzzle. This creates a kind of barrier so that I can fill that muzzle with treats or kibble or whatever I want to put in there, and she can eat the treats out of there. So it makes it like a little basket or a bucket that she can literally put her face in and eat the food out of, which you'll see her doing here. So I sprinkle some treats in. Here she comes, face in, and she's just going to eat all those treats. If you have the scavenger guard that comes with some of these muzzles, you can attach that as well, and that's another way to do that as long as they don't fall out of the side.